This is Lynn Fraser from the Killaby Center for Recovery, and I'm really happy to be here today with Kevin Naidoo. Kevin is a yoga teacher and practitioner and brings a devotion and heart practice to his yoga and his teachings, and also has some things to say about addiction. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation. So do you want to give yourself a little bit more thorough introduction, Kevin? And in particular, what brought you to where you are right now in your life?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Lynn. I appreciate that. So yeah, as Lynn had mentioned, my name's Kevin Naidoo. I teach yoga and meditation all around the place. I used to live a very different life. My life started with immigrating here from South Africa and growing up and not without having any strength or courage inside of me, being made fun of by taking Indian food to school every day in grade 1 and in kindergarten, because that's what my mom would send us with, and just feeling bullied right off the start, and feeling like I had no sense of self, I had no voice, I had no nothing. I was just trying to fit in any way I could. And my inner child over this last 10 years of this healing work has really showed me a lot of things that he hid away, because he didn't have the tools to look at it at that point. So my yoga journey started in my teens. At about 19, I fell into addiction at about 14, with alcohol and drug usage, stemming from just trying to fit in, trying to be the cool kid, trying to find a group that found acceptance within me, and everything is within that. My yoga journey started in my mid 20s. Soon after, I tried to take myself out, in the middle of addiction, trying to overdose and just end everything. And I woke up in a floor about 3 days later, not knowing anything about what happened in those 3 days. And that was a stemming point of starting to awaken into bringing healing into my life. And then it carried in. About 2.5 years ago, I woke up and I had no vision. I had lost my eyes overnight completely and was blind. And my doctor said, "This is your new life." Glaucoma came in, and this is how you're going to be, and you don't have any choice in the matter. So with the love and support of my parents and my family and this community, I went to Thailand for stem cell treatment, and I got my eyes back, to 2020. And during that process, when you're bandaged off and you have nowhere to go, you have nowhere to hide, you have to look at every single thing and all those pieces that you didn't want to look at, and you stacked over all this course of time. So that was a really big catalyst for me on this healing journey.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine the shock of
Yeah.
that, waking up in the morning and not having your eyesight suddenly.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
fear hasn't been a huge emotion that has been in my life a lot, but that moment brought the fear in, more than I've ever had fear in my life.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So if we go back to when you woke up after that 3 days,
Mm-hmm.
what what was your what was it that helped you to say, okay, this is it. I'm gonna do something
Right.
different here.
Right. I woke up. I literally on a living room floor. I opened my eyes. I remember this so clearly, and my first thought was, what just happened? Because I didn't even remember that I tried to take myself out at that moment. The last thing I remember was having a handful of ecstasy and cocaine in both hands and gobbling it all up and being like, okay, we're just going to end this and end the pain and the suffering and all of these other things. So when I woke up, excuse me, my first thing was, honestly, I looked in the mirror. I walked up a short flight of stairs and I looked in the mirror, and I didn't know who I was looking at. I had completely lost a sense of self. I had even completely not even been conscious of the fact that the last 5 years I had created a completely alternate identity with a completely separate name and put Kevin away. And this other name that was in the middle of addiction, that was my new association. That's what everyone knew about. That's who everyone knew. And
Mhm.
that first glimpse of the mirror was that I saw Kevin for a flicker of a moment staring in the mirror, and I completely forgot about it. I didn't know who he even was. I didn't know what he even looked like. So that glimpse showed me that he's still there. And
Wow.
it gave me that permission to, I'm not gonna lie, Lynn, that day I had that awareness, but also that day I went and got wasted because that's all I knew. And I was like, okay, well, I'm back into it. So it was one foot in the door of this awakeness and the other foot in the comfortability of the addiction.
Right.
Right. So it was working over the next few years to navigate between those.
Hmm. And what was it that helped you to start to move towards health and recovery?
So the first yoga class I took, a friend, I was living in the Caribbean at the time, and a friend came and stayed with me, and we practiced on the beach one day, and at the end of that class, I was bawling my eyes out like a 2-year-old. I couldn't even stop the tears crying. All I remember doing was calling my mom because my mom's always been my go-to, and I called her and I was like, what's even going on? I can't stop crying. I don't know what's going on. And we just had a conversation, and the next day we practiced again, and same thing happened, bawling my eyes like a 2-year-old, and that happened for a week. And after that week I'm like, okay, there's obviously something here. There's something that I'm not looking at, that I'm scared and fearful to look at, and there's a big separation between my physical body and my emotional body. And that was that awareness that happened. So I continue to practice, not fully, not dedicated. I still had one foot in that party door, one foot in this new beginning. And I started to work through that and navigate. And instead of running and shutting down with emotions, I started to slowly start to look at
Right. I think it's really interesting that you kept doing yoga every day for a week.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There was
I
something in you that drew you
There
to that.
was. There was something there that just clicked, and my mom is, like I said, she's my go-to, and she just supported me through that journey and held space for me to just cry and to be vulnerable and to get mad and to go through all of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm.
Mhm.
And does she do yoga or meditation? Is she involved in that at all?
So once I started teaching my mom and my dad, and
Mhm.
they started practicing together every single morning. Every single morning, they would do a subtle practice, and they would just have that connection and that time together.
Mm. Oh, that's
hmm
beautiful. Mm.
Yoga felt like I was coming home for the first time. It was coming home to me, and I felt safe, and I felt safe to be me.
So on your website, you have some writings about devotion, about
hmm
bhavana. What
hmm
part did that play, or what part that does that play? Like, could you just talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So I grew up Hindu, but my parents never pushed anything. They wanted us to come to it on our own. So I came to my own in my 20s and just started reading and asking questions and things like that. And if I'm really being honest, Lynn, I've never been very studious. I've never been able to retain information ever growing up, or things. School was a big struggle. I'm a bit ADHD as well, and things like that. And within yoga, things started to click, and it was like all of a sudden I'm reading books and remembering what happened. I'm reciting Sanskrit chants, and I'm able to memorize them within a day. And these things, and it was like, again, this feeling of coming home, that something bigger was pulling me in this direction.
Mhm.
And that's that devotion piece. And that's the way I start every day. Is I sit at my altar and I call out to all my angels and guides, and I chant and I sing, and it brings me into my heart. It brings me into that cave of my heart where I can just be, and that's it. I don't have to try. I don't have to get attached to a situation or find a reaction of any situation. I can just find that place of just being and that stillness. And that did it for me more than the physical postures. It was just this connection to this higher power. You know, we might say God, we might say creator, we might say universe, but it was this higher power that I felt really guiding me through this. And over the last 3 weeks, I don't think you know this yet, Lynn, but 3 weeks ago, I lost my mom. My mom passed away suddenly.
Sorry. Yeah.
Um, yeah, she through cancer, and it happened really fast. And
Mm.
um, that first week, I was pretty shut down. I was pretty numb. I kind of felt like I lost a sense of purpose because at the start of my journey, my mom gave me this permission. I was visiting from Vancouver, and my mom's like, I've seen all these changes going on with you. Why don't you go take your yoga training? Why don't you go do this? And I was like, you know what? I'm not good enough, mom. I don't have this strength. I can't do it. And she's like, I believe in you. So I went home to Vancouver, and a week after I got home, I got a letter from my mom and stating that I believe in you. I always believe in you. I support you. And there was a plane ticket to India in there and the envelope and a check for a teacher training. She's like, you go study. You got this. And I called her every day for that 30-day journey on the phone crying, going through all these process of shadow and inner child work and everything else that was coming up. And she just supported me through every piece of it. And then as she's passed now, about 10 days ago, she came in meditation to me and just gave me a little kick and was like, remember your purpose. You keep on going. I'm right here holding space for you and guiding you. So you just keep on doing your work. You're here for a greater purpose. And ever
Right.
since that day, I feel her with me.
Oh, that's beautiful, Kevin.
Yeah, I really do. I feel her in the cave of my heart, and I dedicate my practice to her because she's the catalyst to give me the permission to step onto this path just by her being her beautiful reflection.
Mhm. Mm.
Mhm.
She must have played quite a role in your recovery from addiction as well.
Such a huge role, you know, and the biggest piece was she never judged me. She never ever once judged me. She is the most selfless woman I've ever met in my life. She just wanted to support me and hold space for me, but didn't try to force herself teaching me. She just wanted to be a guide. She just wanted to be the guide and hold space for me to move through my emotions. And she's the one that really taught me that my biggest strength in this life is my vulnerability. That's my biggest strength. So own your vulnerability, own who you are, and walk into that. So, you know, when I do interviews or even when I'm teaching classes, I'll be crying, bawling my eyes out, and I'll still be sequencing the class because that's a part of who I am. And I don't stack it down anymore. I let it out because that is
Yeah.
my big strength.
That's a really good role model for other people too. Most
Hmm.
people are so shut down emotionally and embarrassed and
Yes. Absolutely, absolutely. Shame came in. I had to deal with that shame piece for a long time because there was embarrassment of, you know, what I've done in my life and embarrassment of what I chosen to do. And, you know, there was a lot of judgment from outside circles and things like that as well.
mm,
Um, and it strengthened me because it allowed me to go inside and to sit in the uncomfortability and really notice that the shadow is our greatest teacher. When,
mm,
you know, we could do it when we look at the shadow in our own pure light of awareness. It's such a beautiful teacher, and it
yeah,
takes away that feeling of, well, I made a mistake, because there is no mistakes. It's our journey. Every detour, we're learning. It's a teacher, and we're constantly learning on this path to continue on where we want to go.
Right. So there's something about being seen and attuned to without being judged or without
Hmm.
trying to fix us. That we,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And with that, like I felt judged my whole life and I didn't have any strength or courage to speak up. I felt like I didn't have my voice. I didn't have the confidence to share my voice. So, even in high school and everything like that, I remember, trying to fit in so bad that I'd be standing around 10 people and everyone would be talking and people would be saying racist slurs and stuff towards me, but I would just sit there and take it because I didn't have any sense of voice, any sense of confidence, any sense of courage. I was just looking for acceptance in any form. And even when they're putting me down, I was still trying to look for that acceptance. Right.
Right.
So it really showed me. Hmm.
Mhm. So
Absolutely.
when you look back on that now, what's your do you feel compassion? What's your relationship with you at that age?
So that I've done a lot of work within my inner child and my adolescent self, and within that I had to go in and I had to apologize. I had to apologize first to my inner child for forgetting about him and wanting to grow up so fast and forgetting about him and leaving him by himself, not loving him. My adolescent self, I had to do the same thing. I had to really apologize for putting myself in uncomfortable situations, putting myself in unsafe situations, not having the courage and strength to speak to something if it was feeling uncomfortable and things and stuff like that. And our inner child reveals so much, and there was so many pieces that he showed me that I had no awareness of because he didn't have the tools to cope with that at that time. And I had no awareness, but as I look, it makes sense within my pattern in my life of falling into addiction at a young age, of using every substance known to man to try and navigate myself through. It was a lot of healing and changing my relationship. And when I did that, I printed a photo of Kevin as a 2-year-old, Kevin in high school, and I put him up in every room of my house. So I can every day tell them that I love them, that I love him, and I believe in him, that he's worthy, that he's beautiful, that he's loved for just being him for no other reason. So that's how I spend it every
Mm,
day. I make sure I have that conversation every single day.
right, right.
Uh, and I feel like when we
So
do that, we deepen that relationship. Yeah.
yeah, all of those parts that we're exiling kind of come home.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's what it
Yeah.
is, 'cause I really do feel as we heal the collective. We're all in this together, as we heal, we support each other's greatness at the same time, and it's an active cycle.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so how mm, how was that for you to be so you went to yoga teacher training in India for a month
Mhm.
and then came back and so what was your journey after you got back? Did you start teaching right away or
You know what? I was
what was
still
going
trying
on?
to find my voice. I was still trying to find my voice, and it didn't feel comfortable to start teaching. So what I did, I rented a space in Kitsilano in Vancouver, and I taught to family and friends
Mhm.
for 2 months, a couple times a week, to try and find my voice there again. And then I started teaching after that at some studios, and started teaching all over the place after that. And the first couple of years of my teaching, to be perfectly honest, I was teaching with my ego. I was trying to be the cool kid. I was trying to be the rock star yogi. I was trying to be this other person. And again, I lost a sense of myself by social media triggering me and pulling me in these other directions and trying to do what everyone else is doing. So that was the
Oh,
first
right.
couple of years of teaching, is really navigating through that to come back home to me. And we spoke about that devotion piece, and that's what really brought me home again, was that devotion piece of, when I teach, I don't use the physical practice as number one. I use the devotional practice as number one, and I infuse the physical practice within that. So once I figured that out, I figured out what my truth was and what I really wanted to offer the world. And that gave me my purpose. And my purpose is to break division in this world and to bring everyone back to heart space and to bring everyone back to that place of unconditional love where we all come from. So we can look at each other through the eyes of Creator. So we can look at each other through the eyes of love. And instead of judging people, we can remember that everyone has a story. Everyone has a story, and we don't always know everyone's story, right? But the world, especially the Western world we live in, we're caught off guard all the time. And, sometimes we will judge. But my biggest thing I've learned is no matter what happens, to keep our inner critic away, we just have to honor the wound. We're not perfect. We make mistakes. Everything's not always rainbows and unicorns. So if we walk on or make a mistake in life or choose to say the wrong words in a situation, I honor the wound. Instead of before, I used to beat myself up all day long and run the rabbit hole down in negative thoughts.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
So that's a really big shift. So if
Mhm.
someone is sitting here listening and going, okay, yeah, that's me. I've got an inner critic going all the time. I'm always giving
Mhm.
myself a hard time. How do they
Mhm.
start to make that shift? Especially if they're not really in their body very much. You know how trauma
Right.
is stored in our body, all that energy rolling around. What are
Absolutely.
some like how do people get going in that?
So I would say one of the huge pieces for me was I started a mirror practice. So what that looked like was for 40 days, I got up in the morning and I went to the mirror and I told myself I love myself every single day. And it was, honestly couldn't even get the words out the first few days. I couldn't even say the words the first few days. There was so much resistance there. Um, and then after I was able to get the words out, it started to come off as a joke. It started to come off as a whatever. And I kept on going and I kept on going. And then all of a sudden I was able to look myself in the eyes straight out, and I think it was about 14 days in, 12 days in, that I was starting to receive that love for myself and starting to feel that I do love myself, because everything starts from us. When we love ourselves, we can love the world tenfold. We can love our husbands, wives, children's, kids, everything tenfold, but everything has to start with us. And that was such a huge catalyst for me. And then another piece I would say is I used to struggle with meditation because I couldn't just sit there. It was a really hard practice to just sit there. I'd be all over my head, and it would be there consistently. And then a teacher of mine gave me an active meditation, and that really spoke to me. So that's how I work. So I sit or I stand or I sit against a wall, and I infuse an intention within my meditation. So with my right hand, I connect my thumb into index finger. I say peace. I go to next finger, begins. I go to next finger, with, and to pinky, me. Peace begins with me. Peace begins with me. You keep that going effortlessly, the mind's going to shut off. And you're stating that everything starts with me. And that's how we need to do it. We can support everything else that much more.
Mm. Yeah, those are two beautiful practices.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they've really
So
made
it's
a
something that
shift.
oh, go ahead.
No, sorry, go ahead. I'm all good. Yeah.
So something that caught my eye again was the persistence. So for, 12 or 14 days, it was
Hmm.
a looking in the mirror was awkward, kind of
Yes.
it just wasn't working, but you kept going with it. Just like the yoga on the beach. And there's not that many people that
Hmm.
would keep crying every day that did yoga and keep doing it. So
Hmm.
that's interesting that you were able to kind of go, okay, I have this. What does it feel like inside to know that that's what you need to do?
It's like I feel like consistency is such a huge thing. And I used to force my practice every single day. But what's really supported me within that consistency piece to keep going is don't let your practice have to look like anything. So mine looks different every single day. Some days it might just be I'm sitting at my altar doing my prayers, talking to my angels and guides. Some days I might be physical. Some days I might just do breath work. Some days I might just chant. But taking away that attachment and that control piece of having it to look every single day this way, that helped me in the consistency piece to keep going. So I just honor
Right.
myself every day with whatever I'm feeling, because we all feel different every day. We get pulled in a million different directions every day, and sometimes we get pulled in other people's drama, and pick up other people's energy. So some days the other day my practice was I took shavasana for 20 minutes and I just allowed myself to receive, because a lot of us are givers and we struggle with receiving, and that's still constant work for me, to work with receiving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's a deserving piece there too. Like
Mhm.
we're kind of we're building kind of gold stars by giving, and then how much do we have to build
Yeah,
before we can receive?
totally,
Yeah.
totally. That's exactly it. And my wife gave me this great piece of advice a while ago, and I always keep it at the front of my head. And she's like, I know you struggle with receiving, but giving and receiving has to both work both ways. By you allowing yourself to receive, you're allowing the other person to also do their work. So it has to work both ways. It's an active process. So that made it easier for me. I
Right.
could quantify what she's saying when she says that and was like, okay, that speaks to me.
Hmm. Hmm.
Hmm.
So this inner child work that we do, that
Hmm.
we go from believing that there's something really wrong with us,
Hmm.
and we end up knowing that we're the divine consciousness, or however people
Yeah.
might experience that, but we end up knowing that there's this basic goodness, and
Yeah.
that we might have made mistakes and all of
Hmm.
that. So how do you work with that?
With that, I would say it's my work to stay present. It's my work um, to just continue loving myself. The work never ends, and that's one thing that I always instill when I teach is the work never ends. Every day is a bit of work to come home for us, because when we think about how long we weren't home, how many years we did stack all those emotions and not look at it because we didn't feel safe or we didn't have an environment that supported our journey or anything like that. I feel like when we can look with compassionate eyes, we can be gentle with ourselves and walk ourselves home.
Right.
Because the world,
Yeah.
because we
Actually,
do.
your camera just.
Oh, I'm sorry. The and the world shows us that we need all these different things. We need to have this, and we need to have that, and we need to have this music or this couch or all these external things. But at the end of the day, we have every single thing we need inside of us. It's just us that get in our own way sometime and are unable to see it. But once we start to, that's why I speak so much to that mirror practice, because the mirror practice gives us self love to ourselves. And when we can have self love within ourselves, we can start to look through the layers and strip back the veil and start to see, who am I without my job, without my wife, without my husband, without my car, without any of these outer attachments? Who am I? And that's when we start to get real and go home and start to walk yourself home, essentially.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the practices of yoga are so purifying for the body and the
Mhm.
energy. And when you were first coming out of recovery, were you doing yoga and pranayama at that time?
I was, but it wasn't very consistent, and my body was pretty broken, especially after that many years of addiction. I couldn't touch my knees standing up. Yeah, like my everything was locked and broken. I remember the first studio class I went to in Vancouver. I couldn't even hold downward facing dog for 3 breaths. Like it was a struggle, and my ego was getting in the way. And looking around, being like, why can't I do this? All these other people are doing this, and things like that. So I started
Right.
just super passive, and it was maybe one pose. I would try maybe two pose because I was still trying to find my way into my body at that time. So it was a slow process. The practice looked completely different than it looks now for me, and it just again
Hmm.
I just kept on coming to the mat in however that looked every day.
Right. So
Yeah,
there was something in you that said, keep going. This will
totally.
continue to open things up. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was, I was crying in classes. I was breaking because all these things were coming up through my cellular body and cellular memory and things like that. And that was, for the first year I was teaching, I was calling my mom every single day because I was crying and I was teaching, and things were still coming up. And it was just navigating through that process. But feeling empowered to go through that and to go in deep and to transform that shame that I had. I had this huge shame about my physical body. I was embarrassed about my physical body, to such a degree that I um, I was a virgin until I was 24 because I was scared of the actual act of sex. I was scared, and I was embarrassed about my body. I felt humiliated. I felt a lot of shame within that, and yoga was allowing me to come home in my body again and to feel strong for the first time. To feel like, okay, I can actually do this. It gave me this sense of confidence.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
this body awareness for the first time I've ever had in my life, really. So yeah, that was a new piece to explore.
So how do you work with energy in your body that's uncomfortable or contracted, or maybe
Right.
it's a bit feels a bit scary, or how
Yeah.
do you work with that?
So the first thing I do, I make sure I have a safe space. I make sure I have a really safe space to go in and to do that work. So I have a home studio. I have an altar in my studio, and that's my safe space to go to. So I that's the first thing I would say is make sure you're in a safe space that supports you, and the environment supports you. And then I start to just close my eyes, and it doesn't even have to be meditation, it doesn't have to be breath work. I just close my eyes and start to be comfortable with my eyes closed, and with that comfortability, it drops me into my physical body, and then things are going to come up,
Mhm.
right? But what I used to do was I would react with every single thing that would come up, and it would attach, and I would stop my practice because it would be uncomfortable. So now
Okay.
I know I have my safe space. I know I'm okay to get mad. I always It might sound funny, but I keep a pillow in my treatment room because sometimes you have to get mad, and sometimes I need to hit a pillow and get that anger out and to actually honor the emotion. Sometimes I have to cry, sometimes I have to get mad, sometimes I have to just sit there and just be still. So again, it's moving through that and allowing everything to come up and feeling everything, feeling everything and not shutting it down, and being
Right.
okay,
So when
being
you were
okay.
bullied, mhm, I think we have a kind of a slow connection here.
Yes,
There's,
yes, it's a bit
it's
delayed.
probably on my end. Yeah, yeah. So when you were young and in grade one and early
Mm,
on, and you were being bullied, and as an adolescent, when you were experiencing racism and different things that were keeping you on the outside,
mhm,
there must have been a lot of anger. There's that feeling
mm.
of powerlessness that children
Absolutely.
experience.
Yes, absolutely. I felt completely worthless. I felt like, this one's a hard one for me to say, but I felt so worthless, Lynn, that I felt like I did something wrong. I felt like I was wrong with every single thing I do. I felt so embarrassed of my skin color that I even tried to scratch it off, being a kid, because I got made fun of, being Indian, taking Indian food to school, my color, my skin, like all of it, my hair, like all of it, I would get bullied and teased about that. It brought such embarrassment about my physical body and everything like that. And that was, I even remember grade 4 and someone yelling at a racist slur to me, and me just losing control and getting in a fight at recess. I still remember the guy's name to this day. It was such a piece. And I remember feeling so mad at that point too, because I got blamed for it by the teacher, and because he didn't hear the other student what he called me, and I got blamed at it. So that brought even more anger inside of me, and it was like felt completely disconnected. So there was this anger that was building and building and building inside of me, and growing, but I didn't really have an outlet for that. The only way I had an outlet, and I've made peace with my parents, but I used to react pretty heavily to my mom and dad. I used to yell and scream, and they didn't do anything wrong, at all. And it was all me, and I can definitely own that. But it was me taking that feeling of what happened at school and coming back and screaming about it towards them. Yeah.
Right. Which is very understandable when we look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And my parents they're amazing, and I love them both so much, and I wouldn't be here without them, and they've given me so much guidance. And I'm very much the black sheep. My brother is a PhD. He runs a complete different department. My sister runs a department at a hospital. I took a completely different way out, and my parents have supported me the whole way, even through the addiction piece. They held space for me. They even when I pushed them as far away as I could possibly do, they were still coming in and coming and coming and coming and being right there.
Mm.
They never gave up on me. They never ever gave up on me. Yeah.
There's a lot of talk about how we shouldn't enable someone in their addiction.
Hmm.
And my sense is that we also really need to let people know we haven't given up on them. I think that
Yes.
piece is so important.
So
Yeah.
important. Absolutely. It empowers us. And I know for me, it showed me that there's more to what I'm just sitting in right now. There's more to life. And it showed me that they're seeing more than me that I can't see. They're seeing other pieces of me that I can't see. So what are they even seeing? And that
Right.
made me get a little bit introspective, at the start of my journey. Yeah.
Right. So what's your sense of what they were seeing that you couldn't see?
I feel like they had a sense of my purpose and what I was here to do way before I did. Way before I did. I feel like they saw that sense. They saw that devotional piece. And I'll speak to that again because that was really the catalyst that put me on this path, was that devotional piece. That was, I never used to do prayers. I never used to tell my mom and dad I love them every single day. I never used to do all those things. But that devotion piece just brought me home. It brought me to loving, um, not just myself but my family, and being okay to actually speak to that, because I grew up, we didn't say those things when I grew up in things. And I remember I was the first one to start doing that, and now we all do that. My brother and my sister, we all do that. It's our daily practice, and everything. And I feel like they really saw what I was here to do. They saw what my purpose was and what I was and where I was going. And it's funny because I was out with my dad for dinner last night, and he said the same kind of thing. He's like, it's funny, Kevin, how you retain and can learn all these completely different language, long chants, and have them in your head and recite them and know the meaning behind them, and all these things where you can remember two lines before. They're like there's something obviously higher here that's guiding you on this path that you're on. But he was like, you're so on your purpose, you're so exactly where you need to be. And I know that within me, and it's just beautiful to have that confirmation coming from my dad, who's seen this the entire time.
Right, right. That's
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah.
He's walked with me on this journey, and continues to inspire me. And I feel like I feel inspired every single day. A lot of people ask me, why do you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning every day? Like, how do you even do that? Why do you keep consistent like that? But excuse me, it's not even about me. It's like it's automatic at 4 a.m. and it's not a struggle. It's like there's this excitement to get to my altar and to talk to my angels and
Yeah.
guides and connect. It's like this drive and excitement that just gets me there every single day. And that's my devotion, and that's my
Mhm.
peace, right? So, I always feel like we we all have a devotional piece, and faith is such a huge piece no matter what belief system you are. But we need faith for everything we do in this life. We need faith to love another person. We need faith to go to work every day. We need faith to apply for a job every day. Faith is just a huge piece that almost creates this foundation for us to build upon.
Right.
Yeah.
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 The devotion and faith.
Hmm.
For people that are feeling really cut off from themselves, that
Yes.
they just, that's like a defense mechanism of just kind of stuffing all of our feelings.
Hmm.
So I guess the bigger question is, if you're when you're running into people that are new to yoga, they're coming to your classes, or
Right.
you're saying, I just don't feel anything. And I love it that you feel all that devotion, but that's not for me. Like, I can't even imagine
Totally.
that. So
Right.
what would you suggest for people? Kind of
I
anybody
would,
who's really searching for
yeah,
something deep.
I would ask them to connect with themselves first, because their selves can lead them to that higher perception of where they need to go, or that belief system. But everything has to start with us. So if even when I teach, I don't want to ever I don't like being called a teacher. I'm just a guide. When I teach, I'm just a guide, and I'm sharing from my own experiences and everything like that. And the first thing I want to do is I want them to be comfortable in that room. I want them to be comfortable in their own skin. I want them to honor wherever they're at. So I usually speak to that at the start of a class. If things are coming up, just know, excuse me, know you're safe, loved, and protected. Honor yourself. Don't worry what anyone else is doing, and just know we're all in this together, and we're supporting each other's greatness. So I would allow them to go into themselves. So I would cue them in a way that if things are coming up and they feel something coming up in their physical body, to allow themselves to go there and to see what it feels like. And if you need to cry, then cry. If you need to get mad, you get mad. If you need to take child's pose and bawl your eyes out, you do that, because bottom line, you're in a safe environment right now. Because that I always like to speak to that, because a lot of us in this life don't have environments that are conducive to our healing, that are available to us, right? So the first thing I say when people come to class is, you're safe, you're loved, and you're protected right here. So let go of the veil, let go of anything else, and just know you're okay. We're all in this together. So I think it
Mm.
really has to, for them to connect to that devotion piece, it has to start with them. And then they'll be led to, maybe it'll be devotion through Hindu deities and things like that. Maybe it'll be connecting to their own guardian angel that's working with them every single day. Maybe it's connecting to a piece of faith that they grew up to, but they never felt connected to until this moment. It could be all those things, but allowing them the permission to find their way.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So
without
you
it having to look like anything.
right, right.
Yeah.
That there's no particular structure that everybody has to get in line
Mm.
with.
No, I don't like to teach from a way structure because we're all so different. I just want to give them permission to get into their body and honor and feel everything that's going on, right?
Yeah.
So I used to have a studio a few years ago, and one of the rules I had in my studio is I would never close the door. Class would be going on, and even if someone showed up 30 minutes late, I would let them in. Why? Because they probably need that class more than anyone else in that whole room, and they probably life got in the way and they probably couldn't get there. Another reason is the safe space thing. I used to keep the studio open, and if I used to tell people, if you just want to take shavasana, you just take shavasana, because at least they're in a safe space to do it, right? They don't have to do all the postures, but that safe space is so key for us to do our own healing work.
Hmm. Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's such a deep thing to feel safe.
Yes.
That for someone to have the experience of feeling safe enough to
Hmm.
feel and to not shame themselves for that. And, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Because, even in the yoga industry, there's yoga shaming that goes on from some teachers and stuff. I've been yoga shamed years ago from a teacher in class, and it's not a nice feeling when you get, pointed out to and selected in a big group of people for something you don't know how to do because you're still working through it. There's a lot of those things, and I feel like in all industries and everything. But when
I
we
think
can
we're
connect,
frozen now.
right? When we can connect to us, we just have that greater strength that we can carry on and move through that with a greater sense of purpose.
Hmm. So you teach internationally? Like,
I
how would
do.
people?
Yeah, I teach internationally. I also have a TV show that's on weekly that went worldwide last year, and it's a yoga meditation dharma talk show for visually impaired and hearing impaired viewers. So it's a way for me to give back. That was why I created this show. I so grateful to have my eyes every day, and I want to break the division in this world and give accessibility to every single person, every single body, because yoga is here for all of us. Meditation's here for all of us. It's all for here. So I have that show that runs every Saturday morning, or you can find a direct link on my website to all past episodes. I also teach teacher trainings around the country. I teach workshops as well. I teach at festivals as well. And I work one-on-one with clients every day in my home, as well as I do spiritual coaching for people that are going through their entire healing journey. So within the coaching, we move through shadow work, through inner child work, through pieces of shame, through pieces of physical healing as well as emotional healing, to just come back to that place of love.
Right. And the
Mhm.
website address is?
My website address is www.kevinnaiduyoga.com. And there's direct links to some meditations I have on Insight Timer, to my TV show, and a schedule of all my offerings around the world coming through.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I'll put those up on here too so people can see.
Okay, amazing, amazing.
Well, thank you so much for getting together and just letting us know a little bit more about your journey. And it's so
Mhm.
inspiring that you were able to come from that low and to somehow just honor that urge to keep going and to keep doing yoga and the devotion that started to open up. And it's
Mhm.
wonderful to see
Thank you
that.
so
You know,
much, Lynn.
so many
I
people.
appreciate that. I appreciate that, and I feel
Oh,
like
you're welcome.
that word is consistency. And we can all have consistency within our healing journey if we don't have it look like anything. We just honor ourselves one day at a time. And that's kind of what I'm doing right now within the passing of my mom. I'm just taking it one day at a time. There's some days that I have good days, some days where I'm bawling my eyes out, right? But
Yeah,
it's just honoring the emotions every single day.
right. Being
Mhm.
here. Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you again. It's been lovely to meet you.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, you as well. And thank you for all the beautiful conscious work you're doing. It's so amazing. And I'm just grateful to have connected with you.
Yeah, I am too. Hello, this is Lynn Fraser with the Killaby Center Radical Recovery Summit. We are so excited to bring you the lineup for January 10th to 19th, 2020. Go to radicalrecoverysummit.com to see the new headliners for 2020 and to sign up. You can watch free January 10th to 19th or buy an all access pass.